The council chamber floated in the darkness of space. It was a massive ring of metal and glass that had witnessed 1,000 years of galactic politics. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, their various forms creating a strange rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center podium stood Captain Ji-won Park, her uniform crisp, and her expression calm despite the hostility radiating from nearly every direction. She had been speaking for 20 minutes, presenting data on holographic screens that floated around her. Charts showed the legal claims humanity had filed 3 years ago for the Outer Rim colonies. Documents proved they had followed every single protocol, made it through every mandatory period, and received preliminary approval from the Council's own administrative body. The evidence was clear and undeniable. Yet the Council chamber buzzed with dismissive chatter. Species that had existed for millennia found it difficult to take. Seriously, a race that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 23 years ago? To them, humans were children playing at civilization, Council Prime Vectorus. A tall being whose skin shimmered like oil on water raised one of his forehands. The chamber fell silent. His voice carried the weight of authority earned over 3 centuries of leadership. "The claims may be technically valid," he said, his translator rendering his words in perfect standard galactic. "But the Outer Rim territories have traditional significance to the founding members of this council. Humanity, as newcomers, cannot possibly understand the cultural importance of these regions." Ambassador Mingi Choi stood beside Captain Park. She was smaller, older, with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had negotiated 100 difficult treaties. "Council Prime, with respect, the cultural surveys showed no active claims or sacred sites in the regions we settled. We specifically chose areas that would not conflict with existing interests." Vectorus waved his hand dismissively. "You chose what your limited sensors told you was empty. We are telling you it is not." "Then show us the evidence," Captain Park said. Her voice remained level, professional. "Present the cultural documentation. We will relocate immediately if legitimate claims exist." Another counselor, a crystalline being named Vexion, whose species had pioneered interstellar trade routes, spoke up. "This is not about evidence, Captain. This is about understanding one's place in the galactic community. Humanity has been a member for barely 2 decades. Perhaps it would be wise to learn humility before claiming entire sectors of space." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several species that had themselves violated territorial protocols in recent years nodded enthusiastically, happy to deflect attention toward the convenient outsiders. Admiral Hyunwoo Kong watched from the observation gallery above. He commanded Earth's defense fleet, and his weathered face showed no emotion as he observed the proceedings. Beside him, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Yoon Ji-han, whispered, "Sir, they're not even looking at the evidence." "No," Hyunwoo replied quietly. "They're not." Down on the floor, the vote was called. One by one, species declared their positions. 47 voted to revoke humanity's colonial rights and impose a 30-day evacuation deadline. Only 3 abstained, their representatives looking uncomfortable but unwilling to oppose the overwhelming majority. 0 voted in humanity's favor. Council Prime Vectorus announced additional measures. Furthermore, until humanity demonstrates a better understanding of galactic norms, we are imposing trade restrictions on human vessels in council space. Human voting rights in this body are suspended for a probationary period of no less than 5 standard years. The pronouncement hit like a physical blow. In one vote, humanity had been stripped of their legal settlements, their economic partnerships, and their political voice. Species that had committed far worse violations faced no such punishment. But nobody mentioned that uncomfortable fact. Ambassador Mingi Choi stood perfectly still for a long moment. Captain Park glanced at her, waiting for instructions. Admiral Hyunwoo watched from above, his hand moving subtly to his communication device. Then Mingi Choi began collecting her data tablets. She organized them neatly, closed her folders, and straightened her jacket. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. "Then humanity respectfully withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed to pause. Vectorus leaned forward. Ambassador, perhaps you should take time to reconsider such a rash decision. There is nothing rash about it, Council Prime. Minji Choi looked directly at him. You have made your position clear. Humanity accepts that position. We will remove ourselves from Council space and affairs entirely. Thank you for your time. She turned and walked toward the exit. Captain Park followed without a word. From the gallery, Admiral Hunwo and his officers did the same. No shouting, no threats, no dramatic speeches. Just a quiet, orderly departure. As the humans left, nervous laughter began to spread through the chamber. Vectorus settled back in his seat. Good riddance to barbaric primitives, he said, though his voice carried less confidence than his words suggested. We maintained galactic civilization for millennia before them. Their departure changes nothing. But Councillor Dexian, who had seen many species come and go over his long lifetime, felt a strange unease settle in his crystalline structure. Something about the complete calm of the human departure bothered him in ways he could not quite articulate. Within hours, messages went out on quantum channels to every human installation in Council space. The orders were simple and uniform. Withdraw immediately. Take everything with you and maintain professional conduct at all times. No retaliations, no sabotage, no angry words. Just leave, and they did. Human diplomats packed their offices on 100 different worlds. Scientists shut down their research projects and collected their data. Merchants closed their businesses and settled their accounts fairly. Military officers powered down defensive installations and departed with their weapons and ships. The withdrawal was so organized, so thorough, and so utterly silent that many Council species barely noticed it happening. They would notice soon enough. The consequences of dismissing humanity's contributions would become clear much faster than anyone expected. But in that moment, as the last human vessel crossed out of Council space, Vectorus and his colleagues congratulated themselves on maintaining the natural order. They had no idea what they had just lost. Dr. Soman Lee stood in her laboratory on Kepler Station, methodically packing equipment into containment cases. Around her, alien researchers watched with growing concern. The Vrenthian scientist Quelix approached nervously, his 6 arms fidgeting with anxiety. Dr. Lee, surely you don't need to take everything. These projects are collaborative efforts. Salman looked up from the protein sequencer she was carefully dismantling. Her expression was pleasant, but firm. These projects were collaborative because humanity chose to collaborate. The Council has made it clear they don't value that choice. I'm taking what belongs to Earth's research divisions. But the cancer treatment research, another researcher pleaded. We're so close to a breakthrough. 3 more months, maybe 4, and you have 3 or 4 months to figure out the synthesis process we developed. Soman sealed another case. All the published data remains available. The proprietary techniques and the specialized equipment returned to human facilities. What none of the alien researchers had realized was how much of their recent success depended on human innovation. The breakthrough protein folding algorithms that had revolutionized their xenobiology research. Human-designed. The quantum microscopy techniques allowing them to observe cellular processes in real time. Human-developed. Even the coffee in the break room that everyone had grown addicted to was a human introduction. Across the station, Engineer Daeho Kim supervised the shutdown of the Nexus Array Relay Hub. The massive communications array had been the heart of faster-than-light communication in this sector for 15 years. His alien assistant, a methane-breathing being named Torvik, watched in confusion as human technicians systematically powered down systems. I don't understand, Torvik said through his environmental suit speaker. This is Council infrastructure. Daeho paused his work on a primary coupling node. Actually, no. The Council provided the space and the initial funding. Humanity built, installed, and maintained every component. We did it as a gesture of goodwill, free of charge. He continued disconnecting quantum entanglement modules. We assumed our contribution was valued. We were wrong. But if you take these modules, the entire sector loses real-time communication. Yes, Deho's voice held no satisfaction, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement. You'll revert to light-speed laser communications. Slow, but functional. The Council operated that way for centuries before we arrived. Similar scenes played out across Council space. At the Merchants' Hub on Station Praxis, human traders closed their shops. The Zelthian merchant whose business neighbored theirs protested loudly. You can't just leave. We have contracts. The human merchant, a woman named Hannah, smiled politely. All contracts have been fulfilled or appropriately terminated with compensation as specified in the agreement clauses. You'll find the documentation in your account, but I order 60% of my inventory through your supply chains. Then I recommend finding new suppliers. Hannah locked her shop door for the final time. Perhaps try the Vrenthian trading consortiums. Their delivery times are longer and their price is higher, but they're reliable. What the Zelthian merchant didn't know yet was that dozens of other businesses would be scrambling for those same Vrenthian suppliers. Human merchants had quietly become the backbone of efficient trade in 4 sectors. Their departure would create a logistics nightmare that would take years to untangle. On the agricultural world Verdania, the local governor rushed to the human farming cooperative before they departed. The cooperative had introduced new irrigation techniques and crop rotation patterns that had doubled. Please, the governor begged. At least leave us the agricultural protocols. The cooperative's leader, a weathered farmer named Junho, shook his head. The basic public data is in the council archives. The advanced techniques we developed specifically for Verdanian soil composition are proprietary Earth agricultural science. But our entire planet has reorganized around these yield expectations. Then I suggest reorganizing again. Junho's voice wasn't cruel, just tired. We shared our knowledge freely. We asked only for respect and fair treatment. The council decided we didn't deserve either. These are consequences, Governor. In the medical centers, the impact was immediate and terrifying. Dr. Minho ran the primary hospital on Station Unity, and his alien staff gathered in his office as he prepared to leave. Doctor, we can't manage the facility without you, his assistant pleaded. Minho looked at the group he'd worked alongside for 6 years. You're all excellent medical professionals. You'll do fine. But the plasma fever cases in Ward 7, the treatment protocol, is a standard antiviral approach combined with immunotherapy that I published in the Galactic Medical Journal 2 years ago. It's all there. What Minho didn't say was that the standard approach was based on human medical understanding that was apparently decades ahead of council medicine. Humans had been quietly treating diseases the council's doctors found baffling. They'd done it without fanfare, simply viewing it as their duty as healers. The station's plague containment protocols that had kept a dozen deadly diseases from spreading, designed by human epidemiologists. The surgical techniques that had cut operation times in half, developed from human combat medical experience. Even the nutritional supplements that improved recovery rates. Human biochemistry research. Counselor Vexion sat in his office, reviewing reports that grew more disturbing by the hour. Communications failures in Gamma and Delta sectors. Trade route disruptions across the quadrant. Medical facilities reporting critical staffing shortages. Agricultural planets facing unexpected harvest problems. He called Trade Minister Quelix, who sounded exhausted. It's worse than we thought, Counselor. Human merchants handled 42% of interstellar trade in their active sectors. We didn't realize it because they operated through so many different companies and cooperatives. The shipping networks are collapsing. What about replacements? We're trying, but human ships were faster. Human brokers were more efficient. And human traders somehow always had the best prices. Quelix paused. I think they were operating at minimal profit margins and subsidizing trade to promote stability. Xiun felt his structure vibrate with unease. They were losing money to help us. It appears so. And now those subsidies are gone. The emergency session was called in the council chambers, though the human seats sat conspicuously empty. Vectorus addressed the assembly with forced confidence. We face temporary disruptions as we adjust to humanity's absence. This is expected and manageable. We thrived for millennia before them. But even as he spoke, another report came in. The Nexus array in 3 more sectors had gone dark. Real-time coordination between Council fleets was now impossible. And the Draxan Marauders, pirates who had been nothing more than a nuisance for decades, just successfully raided 2 undefended outposts. Dexian stood slowly. Council Prime, we need to address reality. The humans weren't just members. They were support systems we didn't recognize. They were solving problems we didn't know existed. Nonsense. But Vectorus's voice lacked its usual authority. We simply need time to reorganize. Outside the council chambers, across dozens of worlds and hundreds of stations, that reorganization was already failing. And humanity remained completely silent, their borders closed. Their communications channels returning only automated messages. Humanity is no longer participating in Galactic Council affairs. The silence was far more terrifying than any threat could have been. 3 months after humanity's departure, the Draxan Marauder fleet emerged from hyperspace near the outer rim colony of Thesha Prime, 16 warships, which by historical standards represented a major pirate fleet, dropped their stealth fields simultaneously. It was the largest coordinated Draxan attack in 50 years. Security Director Vornish received the alert in his command center and felt his blood chill. 16 ships? That's impossible. Our intelligence said the Marauders could barely maintain 6 operational vessels. His tactical officer studied the incoming data with growing alarm. Sir, they've been building their fleet for months. We had no idea because our deep space monitoring network went dark when the humans left. What monitoring network? Apparently humanity maintained a grid of stealth sensor platforms throughout the outer rim. They shared real-time threat data with our security forces but never mentioned the platforms themselves. Officer pulled up archived communications. Looking at the old reports, humans were flagging pirate movements constantly. We thought it was their patrol ships detecting threats. It was actually a surveillance network we didn't know existed. Vornash felt sick. Where are our patrol ships? Sector 7 responding to a distress call. They won't reach the Sha Prime for 6 hours. The Draxan attack was brutal and efficient. This Chub Prime's orbital defenses, designed for peacetime security rather than actual warfare, lasted 17 minutes. The colony's shields failed, and Marauder boarding parties descended to the surface. By the time Council forces arrived, the pirates had stripped the colony of everything valuable and vanished back into hyperspace. 3,000 civilians were dead. The economic damage ran into billions of credits. And it was just the beginning. Trade Minister Quelix presented his economic report to an increasingly desperate council session. 15 species are now facing critical supply shortages. Medical supplies, rare minerals, food staples, the distribution networks have completely collapsed in 4 sectors. How is this possible? Vectorus demanded. We had redundant systems. We thought we did. Quelix's multiple arms gestured at the data displays. But humans were the redundancy. When Vrenthian shipping was delayed, human merchants filled the gaps. When Zelthian miners had equipment failures, human engineers quietly fixed them. Every species was optimized for efficiency because humans were the backup system nobody acknowledged. Counselor Vexian reviewed infrastructure reports with mounting horror. The Nexus Array. Someone explained to me why we can't repair it. An engineer, one of the Drexith Collective's best, stood nervously. Counselor, the quantum entanglement nodes are far more sophisticated than we understood. We have the plans the humans left in the public archives, but the actual construction requires precision we can't achieve. The tolerances are measured in subatomic units. We don't have the manufacturing capabilities. The humans built hundreds of these nodes, as Counselor. We're now realizing their manufacturing technology is significantly more advanced than ours in several key areas. We always assumed we were technological equals. We weren't. In the medical centers, the crisis was becoming catastrophic. The plague that Dr. Minho's team had been quietly managing on Station Unity had spread to 3 other stations. Without human epidemiologists coordinating containment, without human pharmaceuticals treating the infected, the disease was running wild. The Council's medical director, a Vrenthian physician named Kelix, studied the human protocols with growing desperation. It says here to administer the antiviral in combination with immune system boosters. But which immune boosters? We have 17 different options. His assistant checked the reference notes. It doesn't specify because apparently the human doctors adjusted the treatment individually based on each patient's genetic profile and symptoms. There's no standard protocol because they customized everything.
Nice.
That's impossible. That would require real-time genetic analysis, predictive disease modeling, and pharmaceutical synthesis capabilities we don't have. The assistant's voice was flat. The humans were apparently running medical technology a generation ahead of ours and never mentioned it. Kellex wanted to scream. Humans had been in the council for 23 years. How had they advanced so quickly? Or had they been this advanced all along and simply never shown off? On the human side of the border, Captain Jiwon Park reviewed reports from her intelligence officers. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-han presented the latest analysis. Captain, we're detecting increased council military activity near our borders. Scout ships, mostly. They're trying to assess our defensive capabilities. Are they being aggressive? No, ma'am. Just observing. We've been tracking them easily with our sensor nets, but we haven't engaged. Good. Maintain monitoring protocol. No provocations, but make it clear we see them. Admiral Hun Wukong joined the briefing from his flagship. How bad is it getting over there? Giwon pulled up the compiled intelligence. Bad. The Draxan Marauders have hit for more colonies. Council response times are terrible without our patrol coordination. Economic indicators show cascade failures in multiple sectors. Medical crises on at least a dozen stations. And their communications infrastructure is degrading faster than they can repair it. Any requests for assistance? 17 official diplomatic requests in the past week alone. All of them demanding we return to fulfill our obligations to the Council. None of them offering apologies or change terms. Ian Wu's weathered face showed no surprise. They still don't understand.
Oh, sir?
They think we're punishing them. They don't realize we're just not helping them anymore. There's a difference. Ambassador Minji Choi had been listening to the briefing from her office on Earth. She spoke up quietly. The difference is important. We're not causing their problems. We're simply not solving them anymore. They built a civilization that depended on our contributions without realizing it. Another alert came through. The Draxan Marauders were massing a major fleet in uncontrolled space. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for something big. The target was still unknown. But possibilities included several lightly defended Council core worlds. The Council's own intelligence finally detected the buildup. But without the Nexus Array, they couldn't coordinate a response quickly enough. Security Director Vornash presented the threat assessment to an emergency council session. 53 Draxan warships. They've been building this fleet for months, possibly years. Our previous estimate of their capabilities was off by a factor of 10. How did we miss this? Vectorus's voice was barely controlled, because the humans were watching them, sir. Looking through archived reports, I found 17 different human intelligence summaries about Draxan fleet expansion. We filed them as routine patrol observations and never followed up. Senshin felt his crystalline structure resonate with anger and shame. They were protecting us, and we didn't even notice. They were doing more than protecting. Vornosh pulled up tactical analyses. Human patrol fleets weren't just watching for pirates. They were actively interdicting Draxan supply lines, disrupting their recruitment, even destroying their shipyards. They did it all quietly, never requesting backup, never demanding recognition. The Marauders feared human forces. They don't fear ours. The chamber fell silent. The scope of what they'd lost was finally becoming clear. Humanity hadn't been junior partners in the Galactic Council. They'd been the foundation supporting the entire structure. Nobody had noticed until they stepped away. Young Counselor Civics, who had abstained from the original vote against humanity, finally spoke. We congratulated ourselves on our ancient civilization while failing to see that these newcomers embodied everything we claimed to value. They helped without demanding recognition. They protected without demanding submission. And when we insulted them, they didn't declare war. They simply left us to face reality alone. Vectorus looked decades older than he had 3 months ago. Send another diplomatic mission to Earth. Use better terms this time." But even as he gave the order, everyone in the chamber knew the same truth. The Council needed humanity far more than humanity needed the Council. And that was a reality their pride had refused to acknowledge until it was too late. The diplomatic vessel carrying Counselor Dexian and his delegation crossed into human-controlled space with appropriate transponder codes and peaceful intentions. They expected a welcome, or at least acknowledgement. Instead, they were immediately painted by targeting sensors so sophisticated the ship's defensive systems couldn't even identify their source. Admiral Hunhua Kong's face appeared on the main view screen. His expression was neutral, but his meaning was clear. "Counselor Vexian, you are in human sovereign space. State your purpose." Vexian felt his crystalline structure shift uncomfortably. The human admiral's tone held no hostility, just absolute authority. "Admiral Kong, we request an audience with human leadership to discuss recent events and potential paths forward." One moment. The connection switched to Ambassador Minji Choi. She sat in what appeared to be an ordinary office, but Vexian noticed security personnel visible through the windows behind her. "Earth was taking no chances, Counselor." Minji's voice was polite but distant. "The Galactic Council made its position very clear 3 months ago. Humanity accepted that position. What is there to discuss?" Vexian had prepared a speech, but faced with her calm directness, the rehearsed words felt hollow. "Ambassador Choi, we may have been hasty in our previous decisions. The Council would like to explore options for renewed cooperation." "Hasty." Minji repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. "You stripped us of our legal colonies, our economic rights, and our political voice in a single vote. After we followed every protocol, provided every required documentation, and asked only for the fairness you promised. That wasn't hasty, Counselor. That was deliberate." Perhaps deliberate was the wrong approach. We're now seeing that humanity's contributions to the Council were more significant than we realized. More significant. Minji's expression didn't change. "Counselor, let me be clear. We weren't contributing to your civilization out of obligation or in exchange for recognition. We were doing it because it was right. Because when you have the ability to help, you help. That's what civilization means to us." Another counselor in Nexian's delegation, a Vrenthian named Quelix, spoke up. "Ambassador, the Council is prepared to offer revised membership terms. Your colonies would be restored, the trade restrictions lifted, your voting rights returned with full seniority recognition." Seniority recognition. Captain Jiwan Park's voice came from off-screen. She stepped into view, standing beside Ambassador Choi. "So we'd be welcomed back as long as we remember our place below the established species." Quelix's 6 arms gestured diplomatically. "The Council has traditions, Captain. Structure matters for galactic stability." "Structure matters," Juan agreed. "But structure built on pretending some species are inherently superior to others isn't stability. It's arrogance wearing civilization's clothing." The negotiation continued for 2 hours. The Council delegation offered concessions, but each one came wrapped in language that made clear humanity would still be junior partners at best. When Ambassador Choi finally ended the discussion, her voice carried quiet finality. "Thank you for traveling all this way, Counselor Vexian. Your proposals are noted and declined. Humanity will not return to the Galactic Council under any terms that don't grant us full equality with all member species. Safe travels." The connection ended. The diplomatic vessel turned back toward Council space, its mission a complete failure. In Council chambers, the report of the failed negotiation hit like a physical blow. Vectorus stood before the assembly, his shimmering skin dulled with stress. "They refused. The humans actually refused our generous terms." "Perhaps the terms weren't as generous as we believed," Counselor Civic said quietly. The young counselor had been growing bolder in recent weeks as the crisis deepened. "We offered them a chance to return to the same subordinate position they left. Why would they accept that? Because the alternative is remaining isolated from galactic civilization." "Are they isolated?" Civics pulled up trade data. In 3 months, humanity has established independent trade agreements with 17 species who were unsatisfied with Council economic policies. They're building a separate communication network. 3 species have formally inquired about joining what humans are calling the Federation of Free Worlds. We're not isolating them, Council Prime. They're building an alternative, and it's working. Security Director Vornash added his own disturbing report. The military situation is deteriorating rapidly. Without human patrol coordination, we're blind in 4 sectors. The Draxan Marauders now control significant territory in the Outer Rim, and our forces are struggling because we reduced our military capabilities decades ago. Assuming the security situation was stable, it was stable because the humans were maintaining it, Dexian said bitterly. He'd spent weeks reviewing archived reports, seeing pattern after pattern of human intervention that had been filed and forgotten. Every time pirate activity increased, it somehow decreased before becoming critical. We thought we had effective deterrence. We had human fleets quietly eliminating threats. They should have told us. Why? The question came from a junior counselor, one of the Methylar species. So we could take credit for their work? Demand they continue protecting us while treating them as inferiors. They did what they thought was right and asked nothing in return. That's more civilized than anything we've done. The argument that followed was intense and bitter. The council was fracturing along philosophical lines. Some species wanted to admit their mistakes and truly reform. Others insisted on maintaining traditional power structures. A few quietly explored joining humanity's alternative federation. Meanwhile, medical crisis was becoming a catastrophe. The plague on Station Unity had spread to 9 stations and 2 planets. Hundreds were dying daily. The human treatment protocols helped, but without the expertise to customize them. Success rates were barely 30%. Human doctors had apparently been achieving 90% survival rates. Trade. Minister Quelix presented economic data that showed complete system collapse in 3 sectors. Food shortages will become critical within 2 months. We don't have the agricultural knowledge to maintain the yields we've come to depend on. We don't have the shipping capacity to move what food we do produce. And we don't have the manufacturing base to build more ships quickly enough to help. The humans must have been subsidizing everything, one counselor whispered. They were doing more than subsidizing. They were actively managing galactic stability while we congratulated ourselves on our ancient wisdom.
Oh.
Then came the intelligence report that changed everything. The Draxan Marauder fleet, now numbering over 60 warships, was moving. Their target was clear: the Council homeworld itself. The route they'd chosen avoided most Council defensive positions. It was a path that would have been suicidal 3 months ago because human patrol fleets controlled it. Now, it was wide open. Security Director Vornash presented the tactical analysis with a shaking voice. They'll arrive in 17 days. We can gather enough forces to defend, but without the Nexus Array, we can't coordinate effectively. Without human sensor networks, we won't know their exact positions. Without human tactical doctrine, he stopped. We're going to lose. How many casualties? Vectorus asked quietly. Billions, Council Prime. They're not just attacking our military. They're targeting the civilian population centers. It's genocide. The chamber fell absolutely silent. The weight of their arrogance, their pride, their casual dismissal of humanity's worth had led them to this moment. Billions of lives hung in the balance. And the only force capable of stopping the attack was the species they'd insulted and expelled. Council. Prime Vectorus looked around at the assembled representatives. His long career, his centuries of leadership, had brought them to the edge of annihilation. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Send a transmission to Earth, not a negotiation. Not terms or offers. A simple message: we were wrong. People are going to die because of our mistake. Please help them. He paused. And if they refuse, it's nothing less than we deserve. The transmission went out on quantum channels. And then the Council waited, hoping that humanity's mercy was greater than the Council's pride had been. The transmission from Council Prime Vectorus reached Earth at 0300 hours. And within minutes, every member of human leadership was pulled from sleep. They gathered in the emergency command center, watching the message play on the main screen. Vectorus looked decades older, his shimmering skin dull and lifeless. "Hey, we were wrong," he said simply. "We let pride and tradition blind us to the truth of what you were doing for all of us. The Draxan marauders are coming to destroy our homeworld. Billions will die. We have no right to ask this, but we're not asking for ourselves anymore. We're asking for the innocent people who will suffer for our mistakes. Please help them." The message ended. The command center remained silent for a long moment. Admiral Hien Wukong spoke first. "We can reach the Council homeworld in time. Our new drive systems are faster than anything in Council space. We could stop the Marauder fleet easily. The question isn't whether we can," Ambassador Minji Choi said quietly. "It's whether we should." The debate that followed was intense and painful. Captain Ji-won Park argued for intervention. "If we let billions die because their leaders were arrogant, we become exactly what they feared we were. We prove that mercy and compassion were just words we used when it was convenient," a human admiral, one of the hardliners, countered. "They expelled us. They stripped us of our rights. They insulted us in front of the entire galaxy. Where were their mercy and compassion then?" "They didn't have any," another officer agreed. "Why should we be different? Because being different is the entire point." Dr. Soman Lee had been called in to consult on the medical implications. "They're right that we're not the same as them. But not because we're primitive or barbaric, because we actually believe in the principles they only pretend to value." The argument went in circles for an hour. Some wanted to help immediately. Others wanted to negotiate terms first. A few wanted to refuse entirely and let the Council face the consequences of their actions. Finally, Ambassador Minji Choi stood. The room fell quiet. She had a way of commanding attention without raising her voice. "The Council treated us like children because they measure civilization by age and tradition. But real civilization isn't measured by how long you've existed. It's measured by what you do when no one is watching and what you do when you have every right to walk away." She looked around at the assembled leaders. "If we refuse to help, if we let those people die, we prove Vectorus right about us. We show that our compassion was conditional, that our principles only matter when it's easy. But if we help, despite everything they did to us, we prove what it really means to be civilized." Captain Ji-won Park nodded slowly. "The Council needs to face consequences for their actions, but those consequences shouldn't be the genocide of billions of innocent people. We save them not because they deserve it, but because we deserve better than becoming what they feared." The vote was called. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would intervene. Within hours, the human fleet mobilized. 15 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and a full carrier group equipped with technology the Council had never seen. As they crossed into Council space at impossible speeds, every sensor on every Council station tracked their progress with amazement. The Draxan Marauder Armada was already in formation, preparing for their final approach to the Council homeworld. 63 warships, the largest pirate fleet in recorded history, confident in their victory. Their sensors detected the approaching human fleet, and their commanders laughed. 15 human ships against 63 Draxan warships? The humans were throwing their lives away. The battle lasted for hours. It wasn't even close. Human ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. Coordinated by quantum communication networks the Marauders couldn't detect. Weapons fired from ranges the pirates didn't know were possible, with targeting accuracy that turned every shot into a hit. Defensive shields absorbed damage that should have been crippling. The Draxan commanders realized too, late, that humanity had been holding back during their time in the Council. The patrol fleets that had quietly protected Council space had been using old technology, equipment deliberately limited to avoid showing their full capabilities. These ships were something else entirely. When the battle ended, 41 Draxan warships were destroyed or disabled. 22 had fled into hyperspace, their crews spreading word that humanity was not to be engaged under any circumstances. The Council homeworld was safe. The human fleet had taken no casualties. On Council stations across the galaxy, people watched the battle footage in stunned silence. Then the celebrations began. Humans had saved them. The species they'd insulted and expelled had returned to protect them when they were defenseless. But when Council Prime Vectorus tried to contact the human fleet to express gratitude, Captain Jiwon Park's face appeared on screens throughout Council space. Her expression was calm, but firm. The Draxan threat has been eliminated. Your worlds are safe. She paused. Humanity did not do this for the Galactic Council. We did this because billions of innocent lives were at stake, and we had the power to act. That's what civilization means to us. That's what it should mean to everyone. Ambassador Mingi Choi's image replaced Captain Park's. The Galactic Council will undergo fundamental reform, or humanity will have nothing more to do with it. Every species will have equal votes. Every decision will be based on evidence and merit, not on tradition or seniority. Humanity will return as full members with complete equality, or we will not return at all. She let that sink in before continuing. Additionally, we are establishing the Federation of Free Worlds. Any species that wishes to join an alliance based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation is welcome. The Council is not our enemy, but neither will we ever again accept being treated as inferiors by anyone. Council Prime Vectorus watched the transmission from his chambers. He was alone, the weight of his failures crushing down on him. His assistant entered quietly. Council Prime, there's a vote being organized. They're asking for your resignation. Tell them I resign effective immediately. Vectorus looked at the human ships on his view screen. Powerful vessels that could have conquered the galaxy, but chose to save it instead. Recommend Counselor Vexian as interim leader. Tell him to accept every term the humans demand. We have no right to refuse anything. Vexian took leadership within hours. His first act was to address the council with brutal honesty. For centuries, we've congratulated ourselves on our civilization while failing to embody its principles. We measured worth by age rather than actions, by tradition rather than character. When humanity showed us what real civilization looks like, we responded with contempt. He looked at the empty human seats. They protected us in silence. They helped us without demanding recognition. They solved our problems without asking for credit. And when we insulted them, they didn't wage war. They simply left us to face the reality we'd been ignoring. They are better than we ever were. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's terms. Full equality, evidence-based decision-making, and reformed voting procedures. Several species immediately applied to join both the Reformed Council and the new Federation of Free Worlds over the following months. Humans returned to Council space. Dr. Somin Lee resumed her research at Kepler Station, where her alien colleagues greeted her with genuine respect and apologies. Engineer Daeho Kim rebuilt the Nexus Array, but this time he trained alien technicians properly, ensuring they understood the technology they were using. Human merchants reopened trade routes, but now they were partners rather than servants. Human doctors returned to medical centers teaching their techniques openly. Human patrol fleets resumed security operations, but now with Council resources and personnel supporting them, the reformed Galactic Council emerged as something better than it had been. The Federation of Free Worlds created healthy competition that kept both organizations honest and motivated. Species began judging each other by actions rather than age, by character rather than tradition. Captain Jiwon Park sat in her ready room 6 months after the battle, reviewing reports. Lieutenant Yoonji Han entered with the latest intelligence summary. Captain, the Council is holding up to their reforms. Most species seem genuine about the changes. Most. There are a few who resent humanity's influence, but they're not openly opposing anything, and their populations generally disagree with them. Guan nodded. Progress was never perfect, but it was progress. Her computer chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Heinwu. She opened it and smiled at his brief note. Quiet week. No crises. Universe getting boring again. Is this what peace feels like? She replied, Let's hope so. We've earned it. That evening, Ambassador Mingi Choi gave a speech at the Reformed Council's inaugural session. She stood at a podium where human voices now carried equal weight, where respect was given freely rather than demanded. Humanity didn't leave because we were angry, she said. We left because we refused to be diminished. We didn't return because we were forgiven. We returned because we refused to let billions suffer for their leaders' mistakes. That choice, perhaps, is what civilization really means. Not perfection, but the stubborn insistence on choosing right action over righteous anger. Not power over others, but responsibility for each other.